Wrestling with Wrestling's past and present.
How old were you?
I was -3.
See, JR is trying to contain Jim Ross.
McFlurry,
It's Mick Foley. Definitely not his, the barn burner that Leif Cassidy and Ty Rally Singh was, but, we'll leave that there.
We digress.
God, I hope that storyline ends soon.
And 6 to 8 weeks later, they mail you a freaking magnet.
Yep. You may know him as the Red Rooster.
Hager kept making out with his wife. It was weird. So then, I'm waiting for them to put the Zelina Vega on a pole match for that to be the...
It is in the mail, my good sir. No, it wasn't, Paul.
Giving us a reason to come here and listen to ourselves talk.
Absolutely.
And then you can listen to us, too. We're off to a rough start.
This is Wrestling with Wrestling's past and present. I'm Tim Kurt.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
Today it is episode 69 and it's all about WrestleMania 19, which took place in 2003.
Mongo did his best Rob Gronkowski imitation there. 69. He's like, bro, 69.
Hey, I'm a kid at heart.
Hey, real quick, how come Mongo only has one name? Like, what the hell?
I know.
Bring him in. He's got one name. Tim's like, I'm Tim Kurt. And I'm like, I'm Roland Fields. He's just like, I'm Mongo.
I don't know. It just is what it is, I guess.
Oh, yeah. This is one of the more memorable WrestleManias, in my opinion. I don't know how it stacks up for other people, but in my opinion, the stuff that happened in this WrestleMania, I still remember to this day. I know we're going to get into it, but there are certain spots that have impacted wrestling that you think about, in your mind as future things that you wish you could see again, and things that you've seen in the past that like just give you that. It for whatever reason, it just sits in your memory. And there's some spots in this show that do that.
No, I agree. Everyone likes going to the movie or going to see the big cinematic event. And as a wrestling fan, there's no bigger feeling like our Super Bowl, to be cliche, is WrestleMania. So when we watch a WrestleMania, we don't want it to just be another pay-per-view. We don't want it to just be thrown together. We want it to have meaning, storyline, passion, great matches, and be a spectacle, because that's what WrestleMania is, and that's what it should be. And this is also one of the ones that I hold highly in that regard, because WrestleMania 17 is probably one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. Maybe 18. This one's right up there. This is definitely top 10. I know I don't want to spoil my ratings, but it's definitely a good one. I'm excited to go through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, we'll get into it, but especially the last 5 or 6 matches on this card were really spectacular, and we'll break them all down. But first, we got to talk about our dark match, which was a tag team match for the World Tag Team Championship. You have Chief Morley, formerly known as Val Venus, and Lance Storm, getting a win over Kane and Rob Van Dam in about 7 minutes. This was on Heat. We didn't get a chance to see it. They did do a recap during the show where the Dudley Boys interfered and cost Rob Van Dam the title. I just found it interesting that they won with an elbow drop. Like, Rob Van Dam couldn't kick out of an elbow drop. Like, it didn't make no sense to me.
It was it's one of the longer Heat matches in recent memory too, because usually all 5 Heat matches add up to 7 minutes. So
yeah, this is definitely the beginning of like their pre-show, and maybe this is the era where they put on matches where the bathroom breaks, or when people are filtering to the arena. So you kind of feel bad, because this is essentially, people are still trying to get into the building at this point, so they're probably wrestling in front of like 10,000 people maybe. So it's kind of like, where's their momentum and where's their desire? Like Tim said, an elbow drop put down RVD, who's an ECW, could take chair shots to the face, but that elbow drop, oh no, incapacitating.
Yeah, but you got to remember it was Sabu that was doing the chair shots. So you didn't know which way they were coming.
That's true.
So sometimes they wouldn't. I mean, they'd graze you and they would hit you not even square. It would just be ugly. But yeah.
And can we just talk about what a terrible gimmick Chief Morley was conceptually, and just how it was presented? Like, you went from Val Venus, essentially WWE's porn star, to "Hello, ladies," to this awful, like, I'm the GM and I'm Chief Morley. Like, what?
I mean, this was after he was in the right to censor.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it had to go somewhere, I guess.
But even just have him come back and like, come back with like, the sleazeball in me is never really gone. And you could easily transition back to the gimmick versus I'm an authority figure that's boring as Lance Storm. Like
This is what set the seeds for Baron Corbin to be Constable Corbin.
Constable Corbin.
Yep. Boring Corbin is my kid calls him.
We start off the show with a a singles match for the Cruiserweight Championship. You have Matt Hardy getting a win over Rey Mysterio in about 5.5 minutes. On paper, I thought this was a really good choice to start the show. I mean, obviously, they both can really go. I just wish they had a little bit more time. I mean, only giving them 5.5 minutes really doesn't do them justice. So the match was just okay for me, but I think it could have been something spectacular if they had a little bit more time.
Yeah, a little more time and a little less gaga, maybe with Shannon Moore.
Yeah.
That kind of took away from the almost 5.5 minutes that they had. That kind of took away from it a bit, but it was a decent way to start, and the crowd was over for both guys, even though Matt Hardy was still starting that V1, the version 1 of him and stuff like that. So it wasn't terrible, but like Tim said, it definitely could have been more.
Yeah, it felt really, kind of thrown together, and because, like you both have said, not to beat the dead horse, but it's like 5 minutes ish, so they didn't really have a lot of time to hit their normal spots. Like Rey Mysterio kind of has to like build up to his spots. Matt Hardy kind of has to build up to his spots, and they didn't really have that build, so it's just kind of felt thrown together with some of the more famous, like the West Coast Pop and Matt Hardy's throwing it up and doing some things, but it could have been better. It was just there.
Next up is a handicap match. You have The Undertaker getting a win over the Big Show and A-Train in about 9 minutes and 42 seconds. It was supposed to be a tag team match with The Undertaker and Nathan Jones, but earlier in the night, Big Show and A-Train beat up Nathan Jones, and then it became a handicap match. I texted you guys both this while I was watching it. Like, it was so weird to see The Undertaker in the 2 spot here in the second match. Really weird. This wasn't one of his best WrestleMania matches, and we're accustomed to the Shawn Michaels, Triple H matches. This one was just kind of there for me, and I did like the big evil gimmick of the Undertaker, so it was kind of cool to go back in time and look at that. But other than that, this one wasn't really too memorable for me.
Well, and for me, I was a big Limp Bizkit fan back in the day, so that was pretty cool to have that spot, to have them pretty much lead him to the ring with his entrance. So here's my only issue with this whole thing. Nathan Jones is hurt, so it turns into a handicap match. But then at the end, Nathan Jones comes out and gets involved in said handicap match.
Mm-hmm.
And they just say, well, he was supposed to be his partner, so it's okay. No, it's not okay, because you told us it's a handicap match now. You literally, instead of just saying it turned into a handicap match because his partner's not there, you went out of your way to say this is now a handicap match. It's like, no, it should have been a tag match from the get-go if you're going to have him get involved, because you're plot holes here. Like, you're like Massachusetts. You don't have potholes, you have plot holes. Like, it's just, I don't like, that's the only thing that bugged me about it. I mean, the match itself was so whatever, and like you said, it's probably up there with the Giant Gonzalez, the lower end of the Undertaker matches. But still, like, don't piss up my back and tell me it's raining. That's what this, like, oh, it's a handicap match. But then if it's a handicap match, why didn't Undertaker lose by disqualification?
Yeah,
I agree. That you absolutely just said every way to that. We were just insulted by this premise and everything. And it was funny because I looked back, on the card when we first started talking about this, and I was like, why did he have that handicap match again? I can't remember. And then watching it, seeing the injury angle, it's like, oh, they had no confidence in Nathan Jones, so they just wrote him off the card. So why'd you put him on the card to begin with? You could have easily made this Undertaker versus Big Show match, A-Train in Big Show's corner, Nathan Jones, Undertaker corner, if you didn't trust him to wrestle. Instead, we got this clusterfuck of a match that, like you said, Nathan Jones is supposed to be injured, but not too injured to come out and still work. So I'd be so pissed if I was going to take this to, one, see this as my Undertaker match, and two, be that insulted twice in one night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I was going to bring up that point before you guys did about that. It should have been a disqualification. I'm like,
yeah, they went out of their way to say that this has now been changed to a handicap. They didn't say that it was a tag match that became an impromptu because the guy's not there. They literally, I mean, they said that, but they also said that it was changed because the guy wasn't there. It's like, you could have just left it as a tag match and his partner didn't show up. Like, that's how, weird.
and they love repeating themselves because look, now with Shane McMahon's kind of doing that whole, he did the injury booking, but he was fine to come out too. So it's like, if you're going to sell a storyline, tell it for more than a day, Randy Orton. Like, oh, I got burned, take the mask off. Like, oh, where's that burn cream you have? There's people who could use it.
He went from having a mask on one day to having superficial burns the next week to then having nothing.
Nothing.
Anyways, yeah.
He must know the same guy from Seinfeld that put the bomb on, because clearly.
Yeah.
Weird. And while we're on that subject for a minute, did you see how pissed off Randy Orton's wife was about how the way Alexa Bliss covered him?
Yes.
So, one of you said, I can't remember if it was Mongo or Tim, but one of you guys texted us that we had I think it was Mongo texted a live sex celebration in the ring after that match. That's what it looked like. And it just, I know it's off topic, but I figured we'd go.
Well, it is episode 69.
Well, there you go.
That's awesome. And this is why Tim is a professional, and this is why we have the former radio guy.
Tim saves our segues. All
right. Next up is a triple threat match for the women's championship. You have Trish Stratus getting a win over Victoria with Steven Richards, which I thought was kind of an odd pairing, and Jazz in about 7 minutes. I actually thought this was a pretty decent match, considering the times and I'd say that a lot with the women's matches in this era, but I actually was pretty entertained by this one. Steven Richards got involved, a little bit of Gaga there, but Trish Stratus gets the win.
Yeah, it wasn't a terrible match, and it was kind of like the Rey Mysterio Matt Hardy match. It was just kind of there. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't there. That's one thing I will say about this whole show. There was nothing terribly bad. There wasn't that one match where we're like, oh, that was horrible. Like they did need to be on the pre-show or on Raw. And of course, you're gonna have Trish Stratus go over in this match because between, no offense to Victoria and Jazz, but who's the better person to go over in this match?
Yeah.
It's just, but yeah, like Tim said, the wrestling was actually pretty solid. So it's, especially from this time period, it was refreshing to see.
Yeah, these were three women who can and still work. Trish Stratus still does sporadic appearances, and Jazz is currently fighting for the Knockouts title in Impact. So it's kind of, and then obviously we all know Victoria just came back in the Rumble to kind of spit backwards, but they did a really good match, and they worked together well. They gelled. It felt like, anyone could have won because there was a lot of near falls in this match. Like I kept noticing they had a lot of like false finishes where you thought it was going to be a 3 for 1 person, but it wasn't. So it was entertaining. And, to echo Tim again, it's just need to be a little bit longer, but it was a good match.
Next up is a triple threat match for the WWE Tag Team Championship. You have Team Angle, which was Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, getting a win over Chris Benoit and Rhino, which kind of an odd pairing, and Los Guerreros, Eddie and Chavo, in about 8.5 minutes here. This match, I don't know. I was expecting a lot more out of this one. It kind of felt flat for me. You have so much talent in the ring here, but something didn't click for me. But what a difference a year make, because a year later you're going to have, Eddie and Chris on top with the championship at the WrestleMania 20.
Yeah, I think it's tough when you have a triple threat match. It's even tougher when you have a triple threat tag team match.
Yeah.
Because here's my thing. In a triple threat tag team match, why aren't there 3 people in the ring at all times?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get why. So you have a triple threat with 3 guys, they're all in the ring. But you have a triple threat with 6 guys, only 2 of them are in the ring. I don't get. There should be 1 from each team at all times, and then you can only tag that. It would make it better if you could only tag your partner.
Yeah.
I think that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. That like if they had 3 in the ring and you had to tag your own partner, I think that makes it a little bit more like an actual triple threat tag match. But to me, it was just a tag match with 6 guys. It was weird. It was just weird. I don't like that format of like 2 guys in the ring, 4 guys standing around waiting. And I think if there was a match that was a little bit of a letdown, it was this one. A lot of talent here. You have guys like Shelton Benjamin, still going today. Rhino still going today. And unfortunately we lost Benoit and Eddie. So it was a lot of mixed emotions in this match to sit back and think about it, all this time later.
No, it's just, you hit the nail on the head. It's hard to put the words, sorry. But basically they gelled together. There was a lot of chemistry in the ring. It didn't feel like it fit. It didn't feel like it kind of went with the rest of what it could have been, the potential. There we go. I couldn't find the words. Apologize, guys. And it could have gone better, but I don't know if it was a lack of time or if it was a lack of preparation. It just kind of felt there. And I feel bad because these are legendary tag teams. And unfortunately, yes, what Benoit did is a tragedy. I'm not trying to downplay that at all, but he's a Hall of Famer if, he hadn't done what he had done. And so this is almost all potential Hall of Famers, and they should have had more time.
Well,
besides this greatest tag team.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that it's crazy to think that really the most relevant person out of this whole bunch is Shelton Benjamin right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, you have Eddie went too soon, and like you said, Benoit would be in the Hall of Fame for a wrestler if he hadn't become a murderer, unfortunately. Right. So it's it's a touchy subject. We don't want to like harp on that, but that's the truth. I mean, those two guys, if you look at it, those were the two biggest names in there. And now you look back on it at this, 2021, and Shelton Benjamin's still wrestling. Rhino's still wrestling. Rhino ran for mayor somewhere at one point too. Like, so it's just interesting. And Charlie Haas went down the crapper pretty hard. So
unfortunately,
but weird.
In my opinion, this is kind of where things start to pick up now. The last 5 matches on this card were really something special. We started off with Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. They get plenty of time, 22 and a half minutes here with Shawn getting the win. They've always had great feuds and great matches. I don't think they've ever had a bad match, and this was no exception.
Yeah, I'm a Shawn Michaels mark. So, Jericho at this point in his career was just becoming what Shawn Michaels was. So like, Shawn Michaels was that legend, that name, and Jericho was just starting to get his name. And I mean, they had, like Tim said, some of the best chemistry for guys that had never touched really before. I mean, it wasn't like it was Bret Hart where like he had matched with them before. So Shawn and him really hadn't touched up until all this started, and they knew of each other. They had been associated because they always compared Jericho to Shawn. And some of these matches that you see, they have to have matches to build up to their chemistry. These guys are great from the get-go, and one of the best, I think, Chris Jericho matches at WrestleMania ever. So it says a lot because Jericho's a great talent too. But yeah, this match, like Tim said, the last 5 matches on this show, really, it's almost like 2 shows. It was like night 1, night 2, like they're doing this year. Like you get to night 2, and it's like, yeah, here we go.
That's the best way to put it, because this is, like you both said, this is when the ignition switch was hit. This is when, okay, let's go into WrestleMania mode. And Jericho kind of had suffered the first 2 years of his WrestleMania matches, not his fault, just basically booking. And this is when they realized he was a good heel, that he was a good heel. And the storyline going into this, Shawn Michaels coming back from his back injury, this is his big return. Mr. WrestleMania is back. And then you have Jericho, who's essentially the jealous heel, who's like, no, I'm the Mr. WrestleMania. I've been carrying this company while you've been gone. So the storyline meant something. So the match meant something. And these are both legendary Hall of Fame workers, keep using that word. And it made the match entertaining. And at the end, the show respect. You're like, oh, come on, Jericho. Then he just kicks him in the crotch, like just full on crotches Michaels at Mania to show what a heel he is. Like, I don't care who you are. This is my show.
And that's one of the iconic moments when Shawn went to his knees and Jericho was kind of holding him up before he pushed him over after he kicked him in the nuts. That's one of those iconic memories that I still think about to this day. I know we talked about that at the very beginning. That's one of them. That's where this starts for me.
Next up is a singles match for the World Heavyweight Championship. You have Triple H with Ric Flair going to get a win over Booker T. Just under 19 minutes on this one. Again, another solid match. I've never been the biggest Booker T fan, but he really, impressed me in this one. Him and Triple H, I thought actually had pretty good chemistry, and Flair getting involved a little bit as well, which is expected. But I like this one, but kind of predictable. I with Triple H going over, but I thought it was a solid match.
And this is a storyline you can't do today because they had such strong racial overtones in this storyline. Triple H pretty much calling him boy and stuff, just it. So the storyline was great. Again, a little distasteful, but a good storyline. And, I think Booker T, like Tim said, I'm not going to say I've ever been a huge fan of Booker T, but I appreciate what he can do. I appreciate what he did for WCW before they went under. He was one of the guys that stuck it through to the end, was on them last Nitro. Won the, carried the title from Nitro to WCW, or from WCW to WWE essentially. And Triple H, easily, for what everybody says, easily one of the best of all time. I know a lot of people say that his influence backstage creates some of that, which, whatever, it is what it is. But very good match, and a good way to follow up the match from before. A totally different story, two different, more of a ground and pound feel versus the high flyer feel. And two great matches back to back. And Triple H, Shawn Michaels, in my opinion, two of my favorites of all time. So these two matches definitely started making the show really pop for me.
No, it's well said, because this match was, I still remember how I felt during this match. And for some reason, I just thought Booker T was capturing the title back then. I remember thinking back then, like, this is Booker T's moment. Triple H was handed this title by Bischoff. He didn't really earn this title. Booker T's earned his moment. So I thought it would make more sense storyline wise. And, obviously knowing the result, you're like, they just went the wrong way with the story. And like Roland said, it's kind of hard to do this story today because of the undertones in it and just kind of like the little innuendos that were in it to allude to things that probably aren't the most appropriate things. But even both guys have committed that I wasn't the best writing, but they tried their best to make the match, and it was a good match. It wasn't a bad match. It's just the bad storytelling and the wrong person went over, in my opinion. I think Booker T should have gotten the belt, and he should have been the 6th time instead of the 5 time. So it didn't really make sense in the ending, but I don't want to take away. It was a really good match, and both guys are in the Hall of Fame. Well, Triple H isn't there yet, but both guys will be in the Hall of Fame for a reason. And Triple H is still one of the best, and I hope he has his WrestleMania moment this year, even if it's something small, just because I feel like it's not WrestleMania unless Triple H does something.
Mm-hmm. And Triple H is there with DX, though, technically. So
true.
But has Triple H ever lost to a WCW guy? Ever?
Pretty much no.
No, I don't think so.
Sting's like, damn it.
Next up is a street fight between Hulk Hogan and Mr. McMahon, with Hulk Hogan's career on the line. I actually really enjoyed this one. I've always liked Mr. McMahon's work in the ring. You got to give him credit. I mean, he's the boss of this company. He's in his 50s here and is doing this crazy stuff. He did a spot off the ladder onto the announce table. I was really entertained by this. It had some gaga, but not overly done. You had the appearance by Piper. You had the Sylvain Grenier as the Montreal referee coming in. But the thing I take away from this match the most is there's a shot where Mr. McMahon goes to get the lead pipe under the ring, and they have a camera angle of his face that's slowly rising up from the ring, and he's bleeding all over the place, and he just has this smirk and smile on his face. I thought that was probably the best camera shot of this whole pay-per-view, and I thought this match was really awesome.
The only other camera shot that might marvel that or be close to it was when Hebner stepped on the pipe.
Yeah.
And you see Vince do the same kind of thing. He does this, and he's got blood dripping off his nose, and he looks up at the referee like, what are you doing? Same thing. So, I mean, that was from the side, so that was a cool shot too. But it's tough because, you have low expectations knowing Vince is in this match, and it seems like whenever Vince is in a match, he blows it out of the water. And he's definitely not a wrestler by any means, so it definitely was way better than I thought in my head it was going to be, and I remember it being. I don't know if I have more of appreciation for it now than I did then, but and to see Piper get involved, even though that was still kind of weird too, like it was almost like the timing was a little bit off on that. Like he should have came in, when Hogan's flopping around like a dead fish the whole time, so for him to come, he had to wait for Hogan to get up for he's still waiting now, and it felt like forever. And you knew it was going to happen. You had that, unfortunately, because it took so long. You knew because if he wanted to hit McMahon, he was going to hit McMahon when he first got in there. So that's the only thing. Again, it's nitpicking, but yeah, very, very cool match. And both of these guys being older guys, Hogan, being through a lot of battles, so his body at this point was probably broken down more than we even know. But to go out there and have this style of fight and carry a match with Vince, who's a non-wrestler, just shows you, and a lot of people give Hogan crap for having 5 moves and whatever. It just shows you that Hogan is versatile enough to carry a non-wrestler through a very good match, a very good presentation.
And I think it was smart too, because like you said, he was older at this point. He was well into his 50s. His body had been, broken down from all the years on, the wrestling circuit. And what a lot of people also fail to forget, why some of these older guys are broken down, is when I was on the Jericho cruise, I went to the Jake the Snake podcast, and I highly recommend you guys listen to Jake the Snake if you haven't, because he talks about how the rings are different today than they were back then. Back then it was like falling on cement, because the rings were just solid. They didn't think to put the padding down. They didn't think to put more of the springs down to kind of help absorb some of the shock. So you have people like Hogan, who he said 200 something pounds, but he's probably pushing 300 with that muscle mass, dropping his legs down, destroying his back. And you could see some of his, slowness in this match, but he made up for it because they carried the match. And Tim, you said it perfectly. Vince McMahon's facial expressions in this match is what made this match too. Like, he had the goofiest faces. He had the most evil, like, sinister faces. Like, his theatrics in this match really helped kind of overshoot his lack of wrestling ability. And for him to pull the ladder out, I watched his back. I'm like, what is he going to do with that? I forgot that he did that spot. That was so cool, the table spot. And I give Vince credit. This match was really good for a Vince McMahon match.
Dude, the Spanish announcer gets busted open too.
Yeah.
That was a cool spot too. I mean, you don't see that. It was definitely really cool. I mean, like I said, you look at it on paper and you're like, it's probably not gonna be that good. It actually was really good.
Yeah. It was a surprise match. I was sports entertained.
Brother.
Next up is The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Storyline here is The Rock wants revenge over Stone Cold. He's never beaten him at a WrestleMania before. They get plenty of time here with 18 minutes. A lot of false finishes. They each do the finisher move. The Rock does the stunner. Stone Cold does the rock bottom. I thought this was a really great wrestling match, as JR said about a million times after the match. The Rock hits like 3 rock bottoms at the end to finally put Stone Cold away. But yeah, this was really entertaining. The crowd was fantastic in this match, and this was great.
Well, and I think some of that talking from JR was him trying not to let the cat out of the bag. This was Stone Cold's last match, because he had asked Stone Cold if he could say anything, and Stone Cold said, "No, don't do that. Just let me leave." And they still gave him a send off, though. Like, if you watch it, he had his moment and stuff. And I don't know if everybody really realizes what that was, but that was his send off. That was, I'm done. I can't wrestle anymore full time. I can, make appearances here and there and stun people and drink beers and whatnot, but this is my last hurrah. So I think it was hard for JR to not say something. So I think that's why he just kept repeating himself, because I caught on to that too, that he just kept saying how great the match was and 2 great competitors and all this stuff. But it was cool for him to go out on a trilogy to end his career on a match that meant something. It wasn't Baron Corbin at WrestleMania for Kurt Angle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the easiest way to sum it up. That's 2 Baron Corbin references in this show. We're done. Let's just cut it. But so, this match was really cool. And like Tim said, this match, with them doing each other finishers and stuff, it had a different feel to it. And I don't know if it had that feel then. Again, it's something that knowing that was Austin's last match, it made it even more special. It made me appreciate what they did even more, knowing how banged up Austin really was to get through the match in the first place. I can't appreciate that match anymore. I like Mongo said earlier, he's having trouble putting into words certain things. I have trouble putting into words what this match means for my childhood, because this is my childhood. I grew up on these 2 guys, so it was great to see. It was a great match.
Okay, someone cutting onions in here or something? Just kidding. That was really nicely said, man. Because it's
what?
Yeah. So I'm a huge Stone Cold Mark. He's my all-time favorite wrestler. I sent you guys the video and I posted on the page of when I got to meet him, just because of the experience of how over he was. And like you said, that crowd was so hot, and we really didn't know this was his last match. They wouldn't really tell us officially until I think either the next night on Raw, or they would allude to it, down the road, but they never really told us he retired. So we didn't know back then that it was his last match. And it felt different. Like you both said, like when Rock put on the vest and gave him the stunner, when they just kept having to beat the crap out of each other to try to get that win. And then Rock finally got the win. I think a part of you kind of knew back then, like, okay, maybe this is his last run, because he just came back from walking out because of his injuries. And, his career was unfortunately shortened due to a neck injury. But what you didn't feel it back then, but you felt it when you rewatched it. So like Roland said, go rewatch this match because you're going to get a complete different appreciation of this match and how special, how magical it was. When he walked away and he's flipping the crowd off last time, you could see he was not getting choked up. You know, I didn't catch that on the first watch as a kid because you're just so excited to see WrestleMania. You're like, holy crap, The Rock finally beat Austin at WrestleMania. And it was over and it was sad. And you go back and you're like, wow, that was so great. Like you said, Roland, my childhood, like I'm an adult now, dang it, but that was such a good match. And it's probably why this WrestleMania is so highly for me. 15, 17, and 19 are highly regarded because the Rock trilogy, it's one of the greatest trilogies at WrestleMania. Fight me.
Well, and that's the unfortunate thing too, is that they don't do this very often. Like when have you had 3 matches at WrestleMania with the same 2 opponents that people cared to see? Usually right. 2's the limit. Like you couldn't have had a Rock and John Cena third match. No one would have given a shit. Like it wouldn't have been. I mean, even the second one was kind of like, but these 2 guys were polarizing figures, and it made for a fantastic story. And knowing what we know now, they never did send-offs like that. Like we had to know something was up because whenever a person lost a match, they never got their music played. They never got to, like, you look back on it, it's like, wow, they were trying to tell us without telling us.
Yeah. Well, we have made it to our main event. It is a singles match for the WWE Championship. You have Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle coming in as the champion. Brock Lesnar's going to get the win here. Plenty of time, 21 minutes. Again, this was a great wrestling match. Brock Lesnar, I don't know if he deserves some credit for his pure wrestling skills, I think. Everybody thinks he's this badass, and he is. But he can go pure wrestling, and Kurt Angle obviously is one of the best ever. This is the match for the infamous botched shooting star press from Brock Lesnar, which is still hard to watch to this day. But I thought this was a really good match, really solid wrestling match, and a good way to end the show.
Yeah, I think, looking back on Brock Lesnar, what he was then versus what he is now, this match being 21 minutes, I don't think he's worked 21 minutes a year.
Yeah.
Since he's come back. Like that's no bullshit. Like it seems like his matches are like 4 minutes and it's over. So this match being over 21 minutes is insane to think about how good Brock was in the ring before he left for MMA, before he left for football. And then when he came back, he came back as a different character. He came back as almost like an MMA fighter that ends matches quickly, which I don't know if that's his creative or if that's their creative or a little bit of both. But to see him have an actual wrestling match with hip tosses and arm drags and catch can style wrestling was refreshing. And yeah, that shooting star press, things that nightmares are made of. To see a guy his size go all the way around, pretty much just drop straight on his head. I think of that. I think of the Owen Hart, dropping Austin. Like there's certain things in my head that I'm like, wow, I don't know how these guys didn't get paralyzed. Like I really don't. And I know Austin was paralyzed a little bit, at the time, but if Lesnar didn't have all the muscles in his traps and stuff, he probably would have broke his neck. I mean, it was crazy, but it just goes to show you what the match meant and what WrestleMania meant to him at that time. He wouldn't do it now. Even if he could, he wouldn't do it because he's not the same guy now that he was then. He was way more of the wrestler in the business then than he is now. Still a great draw. And, we crap on him and Goldberg for coming and going. But I mean, if you were going to get paid, like you said, $2 million or whatever for 3 matches a year, would you take it? I mean, I would. So, but yeah, it was refreshing to see an actual wrestling match. And Kurt Angle, I love Kurt Angle, his wrestling ability and the storyline leading up into this, where he was the chicken shit heel, getting disqualified, getting counted out, had the double angle where he, rolled out of the ring and it was his brother that was in the ring. All this stuff was great. So it was awesome.
No, it really was, and you said it perfectly about Brock Lesnar's career because, when he came in, he was a Greco-Roman wrestler like Kurt Angle. He did those type of Division II tournaments, and he was an award-winning wrestler. So he showed his skills off. And Angle being who Angle is, we don't have to go into that. Everybody should know who's listening to the show what kind of wrestler Angle is. He brought the best out of Lesnar. And this, I was shocked because we've had 7 years of Lesnar now where he's just been this MMA fighter. Like, it's crazy to think that he made his shocking return like 7 years ago. And ever since then, he's been different. So he's had a longer career of being like the Basham brother. They go in there, wreck house, leave. That should have been his shirt, not Roman's, because that's literally what he does. And versus where he used to go and he used to have those matches where that's when he deserved the world championship run. He actually defended it. He had good matches. They weren't squash matches. When Lesnar has the belt now, it's like, okay, well, who's going to stop him? Or, okay, it's got to be a triple threat because they can't have Lesnar lose. He doesn't lose. Here, he was actually selling for Angle. That German suplex he took where he like flipped over on his stomach, like that spot doesn't get talked about enough. That's a big dude to do that spot. And Kurt Angle has a lot of trust that not drop him on his neck. Which then again, as we talked about the shooting star press, he dropped himself on his neck.
Yeah.
And poor guy, but you could tell it was not right because I could tell back then. You can tell now he was looped. After that, he was gone. I don't know how he finished the match. It must have been pure adrenaline because he was not there when they handed him the title. He's looking at the camera. Both eyes are going a different direction. This poor guy was not there.
Well, like I said, I can't believe he even got up and walked out of there after seeing it, then and seeing it again now. It's like, gives me chills just thinking about it.
Right? It was just, you really appreciate what they really put their bodies through. Like that's what one of the biggest things I try to say to the wrestlers when I meet them is, thank you so much for what you do, because I personally don't want to go throw my body around some of these rings like that and get hurt. And these people are hurting themselves, paralyzing themselves, or knocking themselves, and then finishing the match. I mean, he could have easily just quickly rolled up Angle and finished, and they could have just sold an injury and then had him taken to the back. Like, wow, he still won, and we would have understood. But he finished and then walked. Safeco Field's not a tiny baseball, stadium. Yeah. He walked the entire length to the back. Mm-hmm. I probably wouldn't even be able to walk out of the ring.
Well, that is our rundown of WrestleMania 19. I'm going to give this one a pretty high number grade. I'm probably going to go with an 8 just for the last 5 matches by themselves. I mean, they were spectacular. It's hard to pick one match that I would recommend on this one. This was a really solid show.
Start it from the Shawn Michaels Jericho match and watch it from there. It's for anybody getting recommendations. I think that's the only way you can do it. You can't.
I agree.
And definitely, I think at least in the upper third of WrestleManias. I know we're gonna have 37 now, so I don't want to say top 5 because it's like close. It's right on the fringe, I think. So it's at least in the upper third of WrestleManias.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I have WrestleMania 18, 17, 16, and then this is right there. So it's top 5 for me personally. But again, you said there's 37 WrestleMania, so there's a lot to choose from. This pay-per-view stands out for different reasons than other WrestleMania. Some WrestleManias stand out because it's pure wrestling from start to finish. They're great bell to bell. This stands out because when it revved up, it just kicked it to high gear and it stayed in high gear. And there was beautiful storytelling through the rest of this card. So this was a very well put together card, well produced. There was a botch, but you don't remember this show just for the botch. Because unfortunately, sometimes you only remember certain shows. Like, can you guys remember Hell in the Cell 2019 besides the botches, or the nasty red cage when it first debuted? I can't. But this one, I'm not going to just remember the Lesnar botch. I'm going to remember the whole card, the Stone Cold send off, the Rock versus Hogan. The Rock versus Stone Cold.
Hogan and McMahon. So you have all the different, memorable moments of this. Kurt Angle embracing Lesnar at the end, like the show of respect. That was a beautiful moment, and it was a great card. And I definitely recommend starting, like I said, starting from the Jericho match, keep going all the way through. You won't be disappointed. I give it like a 9. Yeah, I was going to say it's definitely somewhere between 8 and 9 for me, especially with, the last 5 matches are probably close to a 10 as you're going to get.
Oh, yeah, so. Absolutely. Coming up for you guys next week, we're going to go back to NXT. We had a lot of fun doing this a couple weeks ago. We're going to go to NXT TakeOver Dallas from 2016. So looking forward to covering that. Should be a really awesome show. And then after that, I'll be frank with you, we're kind of up in the air because the whole network issue with Peacock. So we're thinking of, different things we can do to keep our podcast going, because the full library is not going to be on Peacock until SummerSlam, it looks like.
We're not doing remix episodes like Bruce Pritchard. Sorry, Conrad. We're not. We will bring you a fresh show every week, and we'll figure it out. Whether it's covering the week's shows or whatever, we'll get you something. Period.
Absolutely. So everyone, take care. We'll be back next Saturday at 5. Until then, I'm Tim Kurt.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present.
I hope you're all having a nice day.